Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm glad to see there's still people around. We're gonna vacuum the room afterwards, put chairs together, switch off the light, and then leave it in a proper state. Yeah, so I'm gonna finish up this genetics session, and also thanks goes out to the organizers Franco and Volker, of course, and everyone else here, and holding out with us through these complicated topics. So you see from the change in the title that I figured out there's no Bell Beakers in Eastern Europe, really, if you take it geographically properly. So Central Europe is where it more or less ends. But I also, as it is common here, I want to start with a disclaimer and just making sure that you understand properly what we mean when we say Bell Beaker individuals. So we use broad descriptive categories that are often subjective and ambiguous in their attempt to convey additional contextual evidence. So for instance, when we say Bell Beaker or coded were individuals, we mean individuals who are broadly contemporaneous, individuals who share a specific type of genetic ancestry, so they do cluster through some sort of analysis. So that's already very special, or reflect a respective archaeological period, and that can be broad or more narrow of a particular region, which also can be more broad or more narrow, and who then also share archaeological material cultural background, a subsistence strategy, or can be broadly assigned to a phenomenon, as we have here, a complex, or simply a distinct set of features. So that is subjective. So we could also use alternatively population 1 or group A, but this is rather dehumanizing and has been also criticized. So you cannot win in this game. So, or you say the people defined by orange symbols. So we have come down to a convention plus minus where we say if we mean XX associated individuals, Bell Beaker-associated individuals when referring to the archaeological context / phenomenon, or individuals with XX related ancestry when I refer to the genomic background. So when we talk about step-related ancestry, this is what we mean. Doesn't mean that there's this Yamnaya genome. That doesn't exist, but is something that is similar and is approximated by individuals buried in the Samara region around a certain time. So, and there's lots to read up on and discuss. So I wanted to throw that out there. As it's probably also known to many of us, I just want to recap so that the third millennium is clearly a highly dynamic time period, and it overlaps also with a lot of game-shifting innovations. This is a slide that I kindly lifted from my colleague and friend Sven from the DAI, and it just shows that we are amidst of a lot that is going on and explains probably part of the dynamicism that we observe at a pan-European scale, and is the reason why there are processes underway that are shifting people around from east to west, north to south, and there's commodities, necessities, and yeah, things that people want and people reject, and yeah, maybe a few other factors, but nothing is single factorial. And we already mentioned it, there are other potential push factors that lie outside our immediate experience, and these are pathogens in prehistory. And with the benefit of doing shotgun sequencing, also during initial screenings, we can also look at other genomic information in our ancient DNA extracts, and it has been quite fruitful for us, not so fruitful for people in the past. And we've come across a number of positive, in that case, plague victims, and begin to see a radiation that starts maybe 5,000 years ago now, with a couple of earlier cases even before that, maybe in the fourth millennium, fifth millennium. And the question is, when does what occur, and has it to do with the connection and the jumping of zoonotic diseases from one host to the other? It could go also the other way. So we see already that we have quite a lot of cases, and more keep cropping up in the literature. So it's over 20 now, and they spread over a long period of time, and I highlighted the ones that are associated with the Bell Beaker phenomenon here. So it doesn't, pathogens don't stop looking at ancestry or cultural phenomena, they don't care. They want to have a host and do their business. So, and we're just the victims. So, but it's probably also linked to the subsistence strategy, and you can discuss what it means. But this is a separate topic then, and how it transmits. What I want to bring to the equation is that we have since 2018, since the big Bell Beaker paper, that was a beautiful joint collaboration across many colleagues and institutes, also relevant new genomic data, especially from Bell Beakers, but many other sites and time periods as well through my ERC grant. There's another one through the RNR and DFG where we tackle also a region in the Neolithic in today's France, where there hasn't been much data beforehand. So we're trying to fill gaps, temporal and spatial gaps in this growing 3D matrix of data points of prehistoric individuals. So the increase in data density is particularly important because we can do things like IBD, but I'm foreshadowing already results that you already seen how important that's going to be to have good data representation from across all regions in the world and also through time, and how good it is when you have a data density grid like this, for instance, in Central Europe, as through projects such the aforementioned ones. So I will focus on Central Europe, as said in my title, and walk you through the new data here. So through those two projects combined, we have generated about 1,400 newly genotyped individuals from many regions of Europe. And I'm not going to walk you through all the details here, but lots of that is published already, like the Caucasus part 1 and some of the Gurji family is in here that came out this year, and many more, like the Bohemian Transect. What I want to dwell on is, of course, this region here in Central Europe where things are overlapping. In particular, you can't mention the Bell Beaker phenomenon without mentioning the corded ware. What is it? Complex culture phenomenon, thingamajig, you choose. But in Central Europe, in particular, in regions of Bohemia, Moravia, but also Mittelelbe-Saale in the Unstrut region, there's a bit of a classical canonical burial type where it's the corded ware does one thing and the Bell Beaker-associated individuals do another thing, and this is what Carsten already showed, whereas Carsten's concept is more akin to the corded ware as we see in our region. It might already be also indicative of their potential origin further down the Rhine. Yes, so we're dealing with that, and the question is, why is it diametrically opposite, and what is the relationship of those individuals associated with those types to each other, and what is the genetic background? So that has to be delineated, and this is what we've been doing the last couple of years. So I'm just looking at my timer. So the new data that I bring to the equation and talk about today are coming from three main regions. One is Northern Bohemia that has been published 2 years ago, where we have, and these are just the Bell Beaker-associated sites. We have quite a good 2 dozens of sites, and in total we have about now 200 Bell Beaker-associated individuals. This is about double of what was included in, no, sorry, that is about the same that was included in Olalde et al. And there's a growing body of individuals that we can now compare with each other, as you also heard from Ian's and Alyssa's talk, and Inigo's, that there's more on the horizon. So we're about to engage in a maybe Olalde et al. 2.0 sooner or later. But so focusing on this region, so there's a lot. These are settlement pockets, as you can see by the lowlands on this topographic map. So these are the giant mountains or the ore mountains. This is the Moravian Gate, where you get through Lesser Poland through here, and then you have the Danube catchment or the Danube lowlands here, and this is Mittelelbe-Saale, another settlement pocket. So, and this is And those regions are culturally connected, but we'll have to see how that is also genetically unfolding. We've done a case study on Northern Bohemia alone, where we took that a neat time transect data of over 260 individuals taken together, and where we're looking at a classical transect through time, where we wanted to see different types of ancestries over time and how they fluctuate. And as in other regions of Europe, the same picture emerges, but with regional nuance. And we have quite a constant theme going on. There's of course no hunter-gatherers here on this side, but then as soon as farmers arrive, they carry a certain ancestry with them. Then there's a bit of resurgence of hunter-gatherer ancestry at some point, and then there's this incoming. So this is happening around this time, and there's various derivative early farmer groups responsible for that, which have a different background and affinities to various geographic regions around it. And then we have, with the early corded-ware horizon, a steep increase in this so-called steppe-related ancestry. And we're not going to talk about it, where exactly it came from. This is a different topic and maybe something for next year. And but then we see a drop in this, and then a simulation phase, as we called it, during the Bell Beaker phenomenon phase. And then it also went up again by about 10 to 20%, which is yet another pulse or a refreshment of steppe-related ancestry that is maybe coming in from the east or northeast, yet to be decided. But it's following this Bell Beaker phase. So it's tilting back to, let's say, late corded-ware phases. And now throwing the new data on it, I have the privilege of not delving into it. That was explained already. We always use as background scaffold modern-day populations from West Eurasia. You see the general geographic regions here, and what is behind all that is about 1.2 million informative sites, and they are broken down into 2 dimensions by multivariate statistics to make sense of it. Needs to be done, but what's unfolding are 2 dimensions that are primarily explaining the variability, the genetic variability underneath that, so that every individual, every data point can be placed in this 2-dimensional space. And then we gray this out and have a scaffold on which we then also can project our ancient individuals, which have a lot of data missing, because this is ancient DNA data. It's not perfect. So there's information missing, but we can, with the help of this scaffold, place them, and nifty statistics, we can still place them on there to get a qualitative assessment of where they would fall within today's genetic variability. You already realize that this is quite an anachronistic approach. We're trying to somehow explain the past through the present day, but it should be the other way around. But you could also ask, how did we arrive at this point as present-day Central Europeans or Southern Europeans at this point in the PCA plot, and has it always been the case? And if it had, then we would argue for genetic continuity through time. But was that the case or not is one of the major or central questions in ancient DNA studies or anthropology in general. So long story short, when we looked at hunter-gatherers, they fall outside this variability to the west and to the east and have nothing to do with today's situation. The same is true for the early Neolithic farmers, which expand from the Near East and the Levant. And then there's a bit of mixture happening across this axis. And then at some point with the 3rd millennium, we have expanding steppe pastoralists that bring ancestry from the east. And so you would also go to Asia if you go further up north there, and Africa is down here. So the world is a boomerang in genetic terms. And now we're of course interested in what is the situation prior to the Bell Beaker phenomenon. So I do plot everything that is relevant here, so everything that is published, including new data from everything that is Yamnaya-associated, then CW is corded-ware, obviously, and other related groups. which are plotting up here. So corded ware is a bit distinct from Yamnaya-associated pastoralists, and it has already been shown almost 10 years ago now that they do carry a bit of farmer ancestry, which comes from the polar opposite side of the PCA space, and this is the late Neolithic farmer horizon. So early farmers are over here, hunter-gatherers here, but over time they assimilate and do mix, and this is happening all across Europe. So we're dealing with a world that is divided in the early third millennium into farming associated groups, emerging from the mix of hunter-gatherer or local or autochthonous hunter-gatherers and expanding early farmers from the Near East, which set the scene and build a substrate, and then those expanding pastoralists from the East. And we see that during the corded ware, we have this appearance of this Eastern steppe-related ancestry in Central Europe. And at the same time, we have also late Neolithic farming groups in all the regions that I have plotted here. And now this can be grayed out here. We are interested, obviously, in all the Bell Beaker groups. And you see here, they form this amorphic mess and fuzziness. And of course, you have to zoom in and take them apart and look at that regionally. But this is the diversity that was described, plus now enhanced with new data already in 2018 in Inigo's paper, and it doesn't change too much from it. Depending on the region, it varies widely. There are individuals from Bohemia, England, etc., which are the darker colors here. It's already a bit pre-sorted for you, which are high in steppe ancestry, and others are fairly low here, in particular those ones from the Iberian Peninsula, but also Hungary is relatively low in steppe ancestry. We have a lot of exceptions, outliers, etc. They all tell an individual life history that needs to be looked at in more detail than we can. So if we started doing that, then we would still be here another week or two. So, but it's fun to do that, and it's absolutely necessary that we do this together. So zooming in doesn't help too much. You see a slight tendency that there's a bit more darker colors up here, more depending on how you sort it. But this is a qualitative assessment. We really want to know, can we formally test for the amount of steppe-related ancestry? And this is a quick one-on-one on 4 population statistics or symmetry, F4 symmetry statistics. So we always test a number of individuals or groups that we put together in groups for a tree-like structure of their relatedness, and that in the light of an outgroup that we pick. In that case, we use an African group, Mbuti, and then we ask, is there a symmetrical relationship of our Bell Beaker groups to, for instance, Yamnaya pastoralists, or let's say LBK farmers as a stand-in or proxy for Neolithic farming European farmers? And if that relationship is equidistant, then the F-stat stays neutral or around 0 with a couple of standard deviations. But if that tree structure, this balanced structure, doesn't hold up, and Bell Beakers are more closely related to Yamnaya or to farmers, for instance, then in the case of farmers, it becomes a positive value, and then in the case of steppe-related ancestry affinity to that, it becomes negative. So that is a quick rundown. In practice, it looks like that, and you see that it runs from negative values in those Bell Beaker groups to some that are neutral or indefinite, somewhere in between with the help of standard errors, and others like the ones which are further down on PC2, as is shown on as you've seen on PCA, which have less steppe ancestry, more farmer ancestry, are positive. So that is a formal test, and let's say it confirms what we see qualitatively, and here we can quantify the nature of this relationship. And so, but we unfortunately can't tell between, let's say, Yamnaya or corded ware because they're equidistantly related. So it doesn't tell us something. But That's the outcome of this test. But we can also ask, okay, we now know that there's step-related ancestry coming in. What about the farmer ancestry on the bottom side of the PC2? And then you can ask the same test. So let's pick any two of these, several dozen that we have in a relationship, and ask, are they equidistantly related to Bell Beaker groups here on the y-axis or not? And across several hundred tests and iterations of different middle Neolithic groups, it always comes out like that. So it doesn't really matter, apparently, which one I pick and choose. Maybe that's certainly also a matter of resolution. So the large majority of my constellations does result in no new insights. So it's some form of middle Neolithic ancestry until you choose Poland, global amphora, and then any of the others, but this is just one of the examples. And then, oh, hang on, there's something going on. It is positive, and the experts of you in the room on F4 statistics now immediately will know, oh, there's something that is going from these guys to Bell Beaker groups. They share, and in fact, all of them share to some degree. You can now sort this differently and look, is there a geographic gradient from east to west, north to south, if you want, but all of them do share more genetic drift with Poland global amphora than, for instance, with Central European funnel beaker-derived Salzmünde groups. There's a small subset of these. So there's something going on. Keep that in mind. We can also model and quantify these proportions, as we've done since 2015. And this is an example where we take distal ancestry sources. Again, early farmers, hunter-gatherers from Central and Western Europe. And then, of course, this is, again, a bit mixing it up between temporally distal and not so temporally distal. So steppe pastoralists, we could take anything from the steppe Neolithic at this point, which has similar ancestry. In corded-ware individuals, we also go from individuals that have very, very high amounts of steppe-related ancestry down to individuals who have hardly any or negligible amounts. And these are a couple of individuals from Bohemia, from the earliest phase of the corded-ware, and these are all females, in which we show that people are buried according to the corded-ware rituals include not only incoming females, but also local females. So in fact, both, also the ones from which are included in corded-ware early here in Bohemia, there are also females among there, which are very high in in steppe-related ancestry. So it's fairly diverse in the beginning, and then it tethers out across geography if you sort it that way. The same model can be applied to all the Bell Beaker groups. See, some of the models have not the highest support, but you see that there's also, you can also sort it, and again, the same gradient does apply. So it goes from the early ones in Central Europe and then across to the Netherlands. So the North European, North Alpine, North Germanic plain, as it is called, including the Netherlands, and then into England or Britain, and also into France, and then other regions further south of, let's say, North Central Europe. And so, but this is one way portraying it. If we then put it on a ternary plot, we see clearly a development, a gradient that is running from the corded-ware groups here with high Yamnaya ancestry, a little bit of LBK, or actually a lot, and not a lot of Western hunter-gatherers. And then at some point, you can say, okay, maybe that's a natural trajectory that is running from east to west. Yes, east to west. And then at some point, it turns a little sideways, and these are the individuals. So this is not formally tested. I have to properly fit those lines through it, but this is just a bit eyeballing, and you see that at the point from the early Bell Beaker period onwards, in Central Europe, something else is happening, and there's a resurgence of early farmer ancestry that is deviating them from the corded ware trajectory. So there's interaction, in other words, with additional local groups that are, probably from regions outside the corded ware perimeter, but maybe also within. When we then use this idea that, oh, maybe global amphora can be used as a proximal model, so just before or around the third millennium, plus minus, why not using that and maybe Yamnaya and seeing if that works for all my Bell Beaker groups? And then I see immediately, yes, it does. It does. Absolutely no problem. And I have to say that those modeling algorithms are more powerful in rejecting models rather than saying, okay, this is the right one over an alternative solution. Alternative solution would be if you say, okay, let's not use global amphora, but a local funnel beaker derived Salzmünde group in central Germany. It does not work, so it's faded out. So and all the p-values have little to no support at all. So this is not, no one likes this model apparently. And then you say, okay, what about if it's a bit of both? This works for some of the groups, but it's infeasible for others, which I cannot even plot because it doesn't give me any estimates anymore. If you sprinkle in hunter-gatherers and saying, okay, what about if they play a role and you need various different resurgent groups in various regions? Is there a different taste of hunter-gatherer ancestry in the background there? It's not superior to the initial model, and the same is also true if we do combine that with the Salzmünde, Yamnaya, and so it's improving this Salzmünde model, which tells us that it has not the right amount. So this middle Neolithic contact group has not the right amount of hunter-gatherer ancestry to be a partner for steppe pastoralists to form Bell Beakers in a nutshell. So, and all of that can be iterated through multiple potential source populations. But then in the end, you just have to keep in mind it's still model-based. So it has a natural limitation, and you can only compare things for which you have actual data for and have good proxies. But it gets us into certain places and gets us, it gives us a hint of what might have been going on. Another hint of what might have been going on is visible from the Y chromosome results that we dwelt on already. This is an example from Luka Papac's paper from 2 years ago, where we again had this case study in Bohemia where we looked at it. And similar to the plots that we've seen in previous presentations, here slightly different. On the Y-axis are the different Y chromosome groups, and the time is on the X-axis, and you see that everything that is changing from those Neolithic groups, which harbor mostly those G, H, T, and I and C groups, to at the time of the early corded ware, so the green dots and the green males have a different diversity, and that is rich in certain R1b and R1a types. And then, so this is the early corded ware phase, and then we have this canonical corded ware phase where it then becomes strongly, very starkly reduced to one particular type, and the same is happening soon after with the Bell Beaker-associated groups. And then, with the emerging early Bronze Age, this horror show is over and everything is restored again. And also, lineages are coming back that have been disappearing from the burial record for quite a while. Fast forward to the new situation with many more males. Now it's the cultures on the Y-axis, still time on the X-axis. The color codes are now the Y lineages. These are all the Neolithic ones. And again, from the early corded ware onwards, this is early corded ware, full tilt corded ware, Bell Beaker. This is then Unititsa, Nitra, Nitrianska is actually the continuation of corded ware in Moravia and Poland. And then you have the early Bronze Age Unititsa. So if we zoom in here, you see that through time, there is a loss of diversity in this Bell Beaker male cluster here. And there's a few exceptions here. There's 1 or 2, 3 individuals from the same site, which are also biologically closely related, so that can be probably reduced to 1 representative. There's always an exception to everything, but you also see that the same is true for the corded ware diversity. It is all across so Central Germany, Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia, the same picture. So there's a very strong reduction in those two groups over the couple of 2-3 centuries, and we have no clue what's going on. But we also see that in early phases, especially the pre-26 corded ware, there was still a diversity present that encompasses both the diversity that is visible in corded ware, but also in Bell Beaker groups. And my hunch is that there's a genealogical delineation that leads to the later fixation of this group, but also from this pool of diverse early corded ware males is something arising that is then leading to Bell Beaker groups having this lineage fixed in among their individuals. So, and the other thing is, this is also seen, in fact. So this delineation is also seen in the strongly simplified Y chromosome phylogeny that I put together. This is a Mickey Mouse version of a horrendously big genealogical tree for all male lineages around the world. And we're zooming in on a simplified version of the Mickey Mouse version of the branches here that have to do with R1A and R1B. And so you see that everything that is Bell Beaker related starts with a lineage that is generic, which I call this 312 S116 R1B version. So this is a variant that defines this branch, and that has, according to molecular clock estimates, formed around 4.8. And this, as you see, and this is the really important point, is absolutely nested within the diversity of the early and late corded ware. In fact, actually the early corded ware male diversity, where we have this lineage here, which is a deeper one. This is we call it sister lineages in genetics, but it doesn't make sense with my Y chromosomes, so we should call it brother lineages. And then, of course, the canonical or very typical corded ware lineage that is also then manifested here in the classical corded ware phase. Then this is the one that would be Yamnaya if there was a clear and direct relationship to steppe pastoralists that are associated with that culture, which we only found in one exception in Bohemia in a corded ware context, but nowhere else. And it's also not the direct source for anything that has to do with Bell Beaker. If anything, corded ware is the direct source. And to answer Volker's question, the one R1B type, I kicked it out. It's somewhere in here. It's a deep one, so it's unfolding in archaic lineages. That is V88, that is also present in Neolithic Europe and Copper Age Europe, so on. So that doesn't play a role in this scenario. So the R1A, R1B variation is relevant here. So IBD has been mentioned already, and have the luxury not having to explain the methods behind it, but we can certainly take this huge data set from my PaleoRider project and put it all together and have pairwise comparisons. So each of those dots is a pairwise is a pair of individuals that are related in some form, which can be told apart by the way in which they are situated on this plot here, and in which we sum over the number or the actual length of those tracts and the number of those IBD tracts that we find that are shared between two individuals across the entire genome, across all chromosomes. And then you can tell apart first degree from second degree, third degree to deeper degree relationships. And then at some point you see connections, and here's just for our region now, between or within certain regions, but also between certain regions. And here's, for example, three pairs of between-site relatives. Here from the Rivnach, this is a late Neolithic culture, 2 from the corded ware, this far apart, and 2 from the early Bronze Age. But we also see between sites across region relatives, and they are also interesting because they are now spreading out across Bohemia, central Germany, and Moravia. And just give you a feel for the distance. This is a very famous spa resort here in Karlovy Vary that some of you might have heard of. And this is Leipzig, so this is 150 kilometers apart. Google Maps tells me 31 hours walk in a straight line, or as the crow flies. It's absolute rubbish. It's probably a full week or more, even if you're well trained. It's a good 5 days. Maybe Mark can do it. We'll see. It's a challenge for you there. But what I want to say is that we found a lot of connections, and that is just within the 3 regions. There are others in other directions too, as Alyssa has shown and as Inigo has shown, but just between those are numerous. So already in the corded ware times, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4 during Bell Beaker times. And then there's even one that connects an individual from a late Bell Beaker-associated phase to an early Bronze Age individual from Magdeburg-Diesdorf. And now you wonder, how is that working across, here's the Ore Mountains. This all can be connected through waterways. You have the Elbe here, and or Labem in Czech, and you have the Moldau in German, which are flowing together here at Vlinjevesh, and then you go up the Elbe, and then there's the Saale coming from this direction, and the Weiße Elster, and so on. All these sites are very closely linked to waterways in which you can, they're not too strong, those streams. You can just hop on the boat up and down and visit your relatives you want to. So, of course, we only find those connections where we have comparative data to. Of course, we have to fill this space with comparable data, where we have to look at the Carpathian Basin. We do already see connections into Bavaria and Austria down here. And, of course, Slovakia, Slovenia, and all the other neighboring regions are of high importance. So we can't say it's just only that direction without having looked at everything else, but it's quite strong already in that data set here. And what's also striking is that we have exactly along this route also 3 plague victims in our data set already. And if you wonder about transmission routes, etc., might also be an explanation. So where there are connections, there's also a route for everything else that comes out of Pandora's box. So, and with that, I want to delve slightly a bit deeper into that. It's from Harald's, it's now actually accepted as far as I know, and in print in Nature Genetics, fabulous new method. We can also sum up those connections per group of individuals that we subjectively put together, either by archaeological culture or any other affiliation, let's say geographic region, and then ask between this number of individuals and this number of individuals, how many, what's the fraction of shared IBD between these divided by the number of pairs that you have compared between those 2 groups to get a normalized value of this estimate. And then you see that the corded ware not only shares ancestry or IBD with Yamnaya steppe pastoralists, but also very strongly with those global amphora groups. They seem to be the right partner for this admixed late farmer ancestry. But what's more important, and even though there are not too many Bell Beaker groups on there, this relationship, it's maybe a little bit light here, but this still resonates a couple of 100 years later in also the Bell Beaker groups, individuals from the Czech Republic and central Germany in these connections here. That's not zero, there is something going on which tells us about a former relationship of the underlying genetic substrates or individuals that can be assigned to these. So very, very powerful. And of course, now we have to, as I said, in OLALDE 2.0, we have to do this for all of Europe, and that would be a super fun next big thing to do. And then we have to be careful and not be fooled by the links that we see and the links that we don't yet, because we have no intermediate or intermediary individuals who would fill a geographical gap. If we say, we had this during the coffee break, but it's a very important example to make. If we have a 6th degree relative between northern Spain and the British Isle, Britain and Ireland, sorry. I learned it, apparently not. Britain and Ireland, in that case, it was an English side, then it doesn't mean that it is a directional generational relationship. There could also be both in the 3rd degree related to someone who was buried or living in France at the same time. So it's either 6 in that direction, but it could be 3 in that, and then 3 degrees up to from France to England as well. So delineating those lineages is going to be the next challenge, but we're getting there. So yes, to sum up, if Corded-Ware-associated individuals are actually really derived from Yamnaya-related individuals, then also this holds for Bell Beaker-associated individuals, which are derived from Corded-Ware or a sister or brother clade that is closely related to Corded-Ware. We need to look at that in more detail by looking at landscapes of social and genetic relations in prehistory. I can't dwell into that, go into detail here, but we have huge sites here, like 650 hectares with close to over 400 individuals from both groups that need to be, that are connected through those different grave groups here, and we need to understand the spatial and genealogical relation between these. This is coming up. This is what I want to do in the future, but it's absolutely critical that we figure out what is going on in the landscape. So that is what I call landscape genomics or roaming ancestry, and this is what I really want to do next, because it's so powerful. So I want to summarize here. So what I was hopefully able to show you is that the 3rd millennium, and I don't think you would doubt that, is a highly dynamic period, and is also deeply linked to developments in the 4th and the preceding 5th millennium. The early Corded-Ware expansion was highly diverse genetically, but then there was a consolidation phase. And then the Bell Beaker period, or individuals associated with these, are a continuation of a maybe initially westward expansion of this step-related ancestry. And then we have to ask ourselves, as we go further west, how much is that associated with Bell Beaker or not? And how much can we put genetic ancestry together with archaeological observations? So what is striking is the consolidation or the marked genetic homogenization in the later classical phases, where we have also this bipolar burial practice and this accompanying sharp reduction in the Y chromosome lineage diversity, which is still mind-boggling and then is also over. So this looks more like a sect than anything to me, but we have to discuss it, and I wish we had time to do so. So yeah, it must have been driven by some strict social conventions. In the Papac et al. Paper, we modeled it also and said this cannot be explained by neutral factors, because otherwise, by selection, because we otherwise would also see it in the autosomal data, and there's only homogenization and there's not a loss of diversity there. So something is going on that we need to look into in more detail. So of course there's variable forms of interaction with preceding local groups that plays a role. Inigo has fabulously shown what is all possible, what are the underlying processes, and of course we can gain a glimpse from this by studying the intra-site relationships, but also the between-site relationships from comparative large-scale intra-site studies. So Carl Jöran's paper and Volker's is mentioned here, but Alyssa has also shown for the Lech Valley that there's what is probably the kinship structure in those, but it's too early, and we need more of these to say or reliably say, okay, during the Bell Beaker phenomenon, we have a tendency that the communities were likely structured according to matrilineality. This is totally agenda-free, but we need lots of sites to be able to say something more firm. And we need forward and backwards formal demographic modeling to accompany and understand what are the underlying processes informed by, let's say, effective population sizes, which we also begin to understand from IBD-related methods. And of course, this goes without saying, genetic data is naked and nothing without the archaeological, ecological, environmental contexts. So, I'm done. Thank you. Maybe for discussion, and there will be a discussion, I want to just throw some arrows on maps. Because there has to be, I can't leave this conference without addressing the elephant in the room. All right, if we now have this fuzzy mess, that is the archaeological background here, and we have something that is emerging in somewhere between, the Elbe in Moravia, well, it doesn't matter which nation state today, somewhere here north of the Alps and north of the Carpathians, around that time, and that is genealogically linked, or maybe the genetic origin, if you want to say so, for something that is then profusing more westwardly. And then irrespective of what the relationship is between those two, then I think we have also seen from Alyssa's data, from Inigo's data, and from Ian's data, we have an emergence of this further south and west and northwestwards a little later, if that holds. And then, and then a little further, and also maybe going a little back into the Carpathian Basin, and we have to now see whether we want to fit the Bell Beaker phenomenon in a way to it or not. So, and with that, I want to really close. It's clear. So we are on one page. Pots are not people, but people are people. People are people are people. That's clear. People make, receive, give, take, trade, exchange pots. And sometimes, when they mean something, these pots make people, like the empress or the empress clothes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.